Graham and Sibbald. Who are we? Well, we are chartered surveyors and property consultants, with a team of over 200 highly qualified professionals located in 14 offices around Scotland. This is a podcast designed to keep you up to speed with Graham and Sibbald and the property market. We'll be speaking to our surveyors one-on-one about who we are, what we do, and of course, what is going on in the property market. So sit back and relax, and welcome to the Graham and Sibbald Podcast. Welcome to the first Graham and Sibbald podcast. We are here today with Tim Bunker, who is a rated consultant with Graham and Sibbald, based within the firm's Edinburgh office. Hello Tim, how are you today?
Morning Georgia, yes I'm fine thanks. Looking forward to our chat.
Yes, of course, me too, very exciting. So can you tell us a little bit about your role within Graham and Sibbald and the work that has been carried out to date since the last re-evaluation in April 2017?
Sure, my role is I work within a team in Graham and Sibbald's rating department, and we cover the whole of Scotland, and our role is to actually initiate appeals on behalf of ratepayers who believe that their rates liability is too high, and we carry out those appeals. We go and meet with the client, carry out a survey of the property, do a valuation, and then enter into discussions with the assessor and try and get their value down to save them some money. And then we calculate their rebate and arrange for that to be repaid, going back to the date the revaluation took effect. We also advise clients on rates liability for rates relief, that type of thing. Also, where a client is thinking of extending their property or building a new property, they might come to us and ask for a guide as to what we think their liability might be, so it enables them to prepare a business plan. So various roles and different things.
Very busy. So you said you cover the whole of Scotland. Could you, for example, cover things in, the Isle of Skye?
Sure, yes, we cover it right up to the Highland region. We did the Three Chimneys restaurant appeal in the Isle of Skye. We do a lot in the Highland region around Invergordon for the oil industry. We do a lot of appeals in Aberdeen, Dundee, Perth, the Borders.
Amazing.
And right down to Dumfries and Galloway. So we see a lot of nice places.
Yeah, I'm sure. So wherever you are, basically, Graham and Sibbald have you covered somewhere or other?
Indeed. We've got so many offices throughout the country that we have experts in the market that we're dealing with in those areas. So we always liaise with the valuer or partner within that office when we go and see something in the area. They provide us with guidance on values and what's happening in the locality and planning issues and all sorts of things. Maybe some points that we weren't aware of. So yes, we have a full service right throughout the country.
So values are different depending where you are in the country, is that right?
They are, yes. Yeah. They're based on rent. It's a statutory requirement which is placed on assessors. There's 14 assessors throughout Scotland. They have their own valuation area, and they have to value every single commercial property in their locality. The assessors are also responsible for council tax, so it's a joint role. But they have to come up with a valuation role, which includes the name of the owner of the property, if it's tenanted, or the name of the occupier, who is the ratepayer, and the rateable value that's put on that. So that's their role, and then we appeal whatever they've done. So every property is valued.
Interesting. So I think another good question or a good place to start is, for clarification, what are business rates? And can someone appeal against the rates bill that they have?
They can. Business rates goes back hundreds of years. And if you're a historian, it's quite interesting. But basically, it started with landowners charging tenanted farmers for using their land. And this is the way that the landowner raised finance for whatever he was requiring. And that then moved on years and years, and it became the responsibility of local authorities. And they then use rateable value to finance their services. So the values are done by the assessor. The Scottish Parliament now is responsible for calculating the poundage, which is the multiplier times that rateable value. So if it's 50p on £100, your bill would be £50.
Okay.
So that money then goes to the Scottish Government, who then pass that out to local authorities for all of the local services that you receive.
Mm-hmm.
So business rates is really the way of financing local services. There are appeals on various forms. There's a revaluation on a regular basis which updates all these values,
mm-hmm.
and at that time the ratepayer, the tenant and the owner also have the rights of appeal against that rateable value.
Okay.
So they contest that, and those appeals take a number of years to go through. So we're in the process of the 2017 revaluation at the moment.
Okay.
And that appeal period was supposed to end at the end of this year, 31st of December.
Right.
However, the government recently extended that by another year so that the appeals could be finalised, because over the last few months we've obviously been hit by the health crisis.
Yes.
And we haven't been able to go out to survey or meet clients. The assessors haven't been able to go out, and we haven't been able to meet with them. So the whole process has sort of ground to a halt.
Yeah, thank you, COVID, for all of that.
Indeed.
So does every ratepayer pay the same amount? And if so, where can they try and find this information out?
Well, the rateable value is arrived at the same date. It's a statutory requirement on the assessor. So for the 2017 revaluation, the date was the 1st of April 2015.
Mm.
So the assessors obtain all the information. They will send a form to the ratepayer and the landowner requesting details of rent, what works they've done to the building,
Okay.
and if there's been any changes in the rent payable due to a rent review.
Mm-hmm.
So they analyse all of that information. They then arrive at the rateable value. So you will find that the rateable value should relate to the rent that's payable on that property.
Mm.
So retail will be slightly different from offices, and
Yeah.
they will be different from industrial and warehouses.
Sure.
And that depends on how the market has gone in the previous period up to that. So if there's great rental growth in offices, then you'll tend to find that office values would increase at a higher percentage than other property types.
Okay.
So in effect, they do pay the same rateable value as at a date, but
Okay.
it reflects market forces on what that figure might be.
Right. I see, I think. So there was an announcement recently from the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. What does this mean for ratepayers in Scotland?
Well, there was two announcements recently. One, which I've covered, was the extension to the revaluation period, so that will enable ratepayers' appeals to be completed. However, they also recently made an announcement that the next revaluation, which was due in 2022, which is 5 yearly from the last one, would be cancelled and moved on a year to 2023.
Okay.
Now that is not good news for ratepayers, because they're going to be hit with a value for a longer period of time,
Right.
and it will not necessarily reflect the downturn in the market that may be occurring at the moment
Okay.
due to the coronavirus.
Mm.
So it's not good news, particularly for the leisure industry, because hotels pay on the income that they generate,
Yeah.
and so they will not then be able to have their figures reviewed.
Of course.
And also the Aberdeen market in the last revaluation, due to the timing, the office market in particular was really badly affected by higher values, and they're going to remain in effect for another year.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if you think it's a good or a bad thing. So you've obviously said not looking so good. So do you think that the decision has been made purely due to COVID-19, or were there other factors?
Well, interestingly, in the announcement, there was no reasoning provided.
Great.
It just
Love
said
that.
it's been extended.
Yeah.
In some part, there's those that think it may have been related to the English decision, because England moved their revaluation forward as well. However, we've always been supposedly independent, and the Scottish Government has control over rating, so we could have gone our own way on this.
Okay.
So it's interesting that the last extensions or cancellations of revaluations have always occurred due to, well, in our view, a downturn in the property market. So there was one extension in 1983 when there was a downturn, and those, many of the listeners will not have been around in those days, but some of us older punters do remember that. And then in 2015, the revaluation was cancelled and moved on to 2017. Now, both of those cancellations, we believe, were due to a downturn in the market, which would have meant rateable values could well have fallen at that revaluation date.
So it's quite reactionary, do you think?
It is. I mean, revaluations are there to reflect the changes in the property market and where values have gone up or they've gone down.
Yeah.
Now, there will have been situations where property values have probably stayed the same, or they could have gone up. But the important thing is that it has to be done at regular intervals to reflect what's going on. And as soon as you cancel a revaluation, then anomalies occur in the future.
Knock-on effects. Yeah. Well, obviously COVID has affected pretty much all areas of our lives. Like, we're sitting to mere distance. It's changed the way people work, especially surveyors. Obviously, you're saying people couldn't get into homes or properties to evaluate them. Do you think that we're likely to see values drop significantly due to COVID-19? Or what are your predictions?
If the revaluation had continued for 2022, it would have based on values this year, 2020. The only issue that there is on that is that the market really just stalled. A lot of transactions just stopped, rather than there being falls in value. Now, what we're looking at the moment is whether or not what we call material change of circumstance appeals can reflect that. That is where the values have been affected by an outside source since they were originally done. So in 2017, there was obviously no COVID around.
Yeah.
And what we're arguing now is that because of this change in circumstance, this should give a right of appeal. So there's been around 50,000 appeals lodged throughout Scotland. We have about 4,500 to 5,000 appeals on that basis. And obviously, these are current, so we haven't had the chance to analyse information. But obviously, from speaking to clients, hearing about their businesses and how they've been affected, it's likely that there will be evidence to show that material change circumstances are worthwhile doing, and the values could be reduced.
Okay, so we're just going to have to wait and see, basically, in summary.
The clients will have up until the end of March next year to lodge these appeals. So we've contacted most of ours, but if any listening to this want further information, then should get in touch with your local office of Graham Sibbald or the rating team, and we can provide more advice. But there's certainly nothing to lose. If you don't appeal and there are subsequent reductions, then you wouldn't qualify. An example is the tram, Edinburgh tram. Retailers who were affected by those construction works did get reductions in value.
Interesting.
So we feel that this is more countrywide than that, and everyone's been affected. It would be very difficult for assessors to say, no, I don't think there's been a material change.
Of course.
So we shall wait and see.
So under the terms of the Barclay Review, it proposed 3 yearly reevaluations. Do you think this is a good thing?
I think as long as there are regular revaluations, that is a good thing. When revaluations have been on a 5-yearly basis, there's not really been a problem until there is a downturn and that is not reflected in the value. So if you have it 3 yearly, hopefully that will be able to reflect any changes much quicker. However, it will be interesting to see if the assessors can deal with all the appeals that come from that within that period of time. The 3 yearly revaluations are on the basis that the tone year, which will be the year before, is the basis of the value. So in 2023, the tone year will be 2022. In other words, the assessor will send out myriad of forms to all ratepayers, landowners, landlords, tenants asking for information on their property. They will then prepare their valuation which will then go out to the ratepayer, who has the right of appeal.
Okay.
So that is quite a long, drawn-out process. Now, to be able to get all that done in 3 years will be very tight, because when it's been 5 yearly, sometimes it's been quite tight. So I mean, they're hoping that in the long run there will be less appeals because the revaluations are done on a more regular basis.
All right, yeah, sure.
Now that'll work maybe further down the road, but for the first couple, it probably won't, because ratepayers will still want to check that their value is correct if it had gone up in any form. If it goes down, they're maybe not bothered so much. But the ratepayers are of the view that we always want these challenged.
Yeah.
So it's going to be challenging to be able to get this done.
So it's not a great time to be an assessor, basically, is what you're saying.
It's going to give them a lot of work.
It's going to be a little bit stressful. Yeah. And how are the values going to be based?
The values themselves will not change. I mean, there's statute law going back 175 years. There's case law, which has been challenging the assessor's basis of value over many, many years. So that will still remain in place. The values will be based on an assumed rent, and that is based on actual rent, but reflecting any changes that are made to the property. So if a tenant takes a building at a rent and they do some works to it, the rental value, the equivalent of that work, will be added to it. So that's how the whole thing is arrived at. So in effect, the change in the timing will not affect the change in valuation.
Interesting. I feel like I've learned quite a lot about ratings today. Thank you, Tim. It's one of those things where I was having this conversation the other day. I was like, I feel like we get taught so many random things in school, where it's like, because I have a few people that are getting, like, are getting houses and they're dealing with the mortgages and everything. I'm like, I don't know anything about this. And I feel like it's something we should be taught in school, because then, obviously we go on to do these things and apply for rates and have no idea what's going on. So now I'm an expert, so thank you very much.
No worries. No, that's a good point, because people will be entering into businesses, and this is one of the outgoings that is a primary concern to many people who start a business or are going into one. So having some knowledge of it and your rights of appeal, it's definitely worthwhile.
Very beneficial. Well, great. Thank you so much for your time today,
Good.
Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Tim for his time today. I'm sure we can agree this is a highly topical subject and that there will be more updates to follow. For anyone that would like to download a copy of Graham Sibbald's latest business rates newsletter for September, please go to their website www.g-s.co.uk. Thank you so much for listening, stay safe, and we look forward to the next Graham Sibbald podcast.